In the 99th percentile on the UCAT, and in this video, I would show how I break down my time and the metrics I use to know that I was improving if I were to sit the UCAT this year. Lots of people have 4 or 6 weeks left by the time they're watching this video, so it's about how to be optimized and make the most amount of progress in the least amount of time. So without further ado, this is what I would be looking at. And I would split this across the 7 days and have a few days of practice and a few days of assessment. Now, notice I'm not doing mocks every day because, from my perspective, the full mock is good for building stamina and good for getting you used to practicing for 2 hours, but it's not as good as getting you to improvement as smaller subtests that you can then apply a strategy, do the subtest, and review it straight away. I find personally that the full mock takes, the full 2 hours, and I'm really tired afterwards, and you can't review it as well. And even if you review it later that day or the next day, it's not as fresh why you made those particular mistakes. So my preferred strategy is to do timed sets that match the length of the exam. So in the actual exam, your verbal reasoning is 22 minutes, your quantitative is 25, 26 minutes. Decision making, I believe, is about 37, but that's actually quite a long period of time relative to these two. And unfortunately, with a specific decision making set, they can give you too many yes no questions. So I think if we keep it roughly somewhere in the range of about 25 minutes for each section, matching the actual length of the exam, and I would be doing one timed set of that per day in each of those sections on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Well, at least 4 days a week. Now, on Wednesday, or at least during the week, you can do a mini mock, which is basically the same thing, but it's more official and might put you under a different, more bit of pressure. Now, for some people, it might be beneficial to do, 2 sets of VR if you're feeling happy with your quantitative. So that's always an option. But for most people, I'd keep it as an even split, particularly if your quantitative is not at 850 yet. Now, on Saturday, I would do one full mock. That can be once a week. And for most people, it's easy to do that on the weekend. But that will take you a good 2 hours to do it. And it might take an hour and a half to go through that. So that's going to be a more intense day. And I think it's good once a week to have some sort of tutoring, whether that be a one-on-one tutor or a group tutor or someone just to check in with, and then to try and do a couple of mini mocks on that day as well. So overall, we have one full mock day, 2 mini mock days, and 4 practice days. Now, throughout this all, you should be recording your scores because if you don't record your scores, you won't know whether you're improving or not. I think anyone who's done enough of the UCAT will know that scores tend to fluctuate. They can go up and down and up and down. And you might get 25 out of 44 in VR and then 32 the next and then 26. And it can be hard to know whether you're improving. So in the second part of this video, I just wanted to discuss how I would know that I'm improving. Because I get a lot of calls from students who say I'm practicing 2, 3, 4, 6 hours a day on UCAT and my scores aren't going anywhere. And that's a bit of a red flag. So obviously the first thing you can use is just your raw score. So but that's going to fluctuate a bit because you might get 25 out of 44 or that might be a 550 and that might change to the next test you do. Now, if you do an easy test, you might get a higher score. If you do a harder test, you might get a lower score. So that will naturally vary based on the difficulty of the exam, how many you guessed, and things like that. So I think raw score is one thing to be considered. It's useful, but only with other things in keeping with that. Obviously, if you get a percentile, that's useful as well because that accounts for how difficult the exam was. If it's a difficult exam and everyone did worse, then you might get a lower, raw score, but your percentile might still be the same, in which case you're at the same level. But I like to look beyond that at some other different metrics. And I think one important one is just how many you're guessing. So I would always record in a document like this, I'd have VR, DM, and QR, and I'd say, all right, my score today in VR was 26 out of 44, and I guessed 8 questions. And then you can record how many you guessed. Because then next time, if you get 20 out of 44 and you guess 16, my score dropped, but it was just because I stuffed up my timing here. So I'd record how many you're guessing as a strategy and add on to that as well. And then the next thing is how well you managed your particular action points. And this is the point I want to end on. Whenever you practice, you need to have a couple of strategies in mind that you're hoping to achieve. These might be related to timing or accuracy, but let's say before you're doing a verbal reasoning timed test, You basically say, all right, this is 44 questions, 22 minutes, and I want to work on these two things. Number one is I'm going to work on my timing. And I'm not going to guess any questions this set because I'm going to skip everything before it hits the 45-second mark. And then so afterwards, you can review that and you look at your timesheet and you say, how many questions were realistically above 45 seconds here? And then you make a note of that so you can track that with time. You might also have an accuracy action point in which you say, all right, in this set, I'm not going to test all four answer options. I'm just going to say, based on the wording alone, try and knock out two, and then based on the text, try and knock out one of the remaining two. And so I'm only testing one answer option per question, which will help with my accuracy overall and with my timing. And so after that set, you can then reflect and say, all right, how many questions were I above 45 seconds on? Did I test too many answers or too few answers on any of these questions? And did my ability to select the answers in the exam differ from now when I'm looking at it? Oh, I missed this word only. I missed the phrasing. This is a bit specific or this is a bit generic. And with those four things, with your raw score, with your percentile, with how many you're guessing, and with how well you actually manage to achieve your action points, then that cumulatively will give you an idea about how well you're doing and how well you're improving. Now, if you want more resources like this is just a brief sort of timetable about how I structure my UCAT prep. But if you want to call with me, if you want some of my free PDFs and free resources, all you need to do is click the link in the description. I post free resources like this to people on my email list every week, and it's completely free. So just click the link in the description and you can opt out at any stage. Thanks very much, guys, and I wish you all the best for your upcoming prep.